What if the very pain you try to escape is the doorway to your life's deepest meaning? What if the chaos, confusion, and darkness you avoid is not your enemy, but your invitation? Too often, we seek comfort, hoping to discover purpose while bypassing suffering. But the truth is far more difficult and more liberating. You cannot find your true self unless you're willing to lose the one that was shaped by fear, by society, and by avoidance. The road to purpose is not paved with ease, it's carved through crisis. Stay with this message, and you will understand why those who embrace their suffering don't just survive, they rise. Transformed and purposeful, with eyes that finally see and a soul that finally hears. When an individual encounters suffering, the immediate instinct is to resist, to escape, to numb the discomfort by turning outward toward distraction, toward temporary relief, or toward blame. But what we fail to see, often until it is too late, is that this suffering is not meaningless. It is not random. It is not simply the chaos of a broken world, or the cruelty of fate. It is the beginning of something deeply transformative. It is the call of the soul, urging the ego to break, to dissolve, to step aside, and allow the deeper self to emerge. For transformation to occur, the old must die. The illusions, the defenses, the false identities all must collapse. And this process, though profoundly painful, is also profoundly necessary. You must understand, the human psyche is not built to evolve through comfort. Comfort tends to reinforce what is already known, what is already accepted, and what has been socially approved. But suffering shakes the foundations. It is an inner earthquake that disrupts the comfortable self-image you've built. And in doing so, it opens a portal to a more authentic way of being. It is in this moment, this rupture, where meaning begins to stir. No one becomes whole by staying on the surface. One must descend, and that descent begins with pain. To suffer is to be invited into depth. It is the soul's rebellion against superficiality. In suffering, life ceases to be entertainment. It demands answers. And those answers can only be found by looking inward, where the light of the conscious mind meets the shadow of the unconscious. If you run from suffering, you also run from yourself. But if you allow yourself to enter it consciously, not as a victim, but as a participant in the great unfolding of your life, you begin to see the contours of your purpose taking shape. The wound is the place where the light enters, as the old saying goes, but more than that, it is the place where the self is revealed. Without suffering, we remain fragmented, divided between who we are and who we pretend to be. The suffering forces a confrontation. It says, this is who you really are, when all your masks fall away. Can you accept it? Can you integrate it? Can you transform it? This is not a passive experience. It is active. It is work. It requires responsibility. And it is only those who accept this inner labor who truly evolve. There is a profound psychological law that we must not forget. What you resist not only persists, it grows stronger. When you deny your pain, when you push it down and refuse to face it, it does not disappear, it festers. It becomes a source of anxiety, of depression, of meaninglessness. But when you face it, when you bring it into the light of awareness, it begins to transform. This transformation is not magical. It is not instantaneous. It is alchemical. It is the slow conversion of lead into gold, of suffering into wisdom, of pain into clarity, of chaos into purpose. But this demands that you face what you most fear, the shadow. The shadow is not simply the dark side of the psyche, it is the unacknowledged side. It is made of everything you have rejected in yourself because it was too painful, too shameful, too disruptive to your image. And yet, paradoxically, the very energy you need to move forward, to create, to love deeply, to live meaningfully, is buried in that same shadow. What lies in the shadow is not evil, it is potential. It is the part of you that holds your deepest truths, your strongest desires, your most honest insights. The journey to purpose requires that you turn toward your shadow and say, I see you. I will not run from you. This is not done in arrogance. It is done in humility. You cannot control the shadow, but you can engage with it. You can dialogue with it. You can integrate it. And in that integration, you begin to walk a different kind of path, not the path of societal success or external validation, but the path of inner unity. You begin to live from your center, not from the projections of others. And here's the paradox. The parts of yourself you thought disqualified you from your purpose are often the very keys to it. The shame you carry may give you compassion. The failure you experienced may teach you endurance. The rage you suppressed may contain the fire needed to speak truth in a world addicted to lies. But none of this is possible unless you face these elements within yourself. You cannot heal what you will not touch. And you cannot touch it unless you accept the descent. This descent is not a fall from grace, is the movement toward wholeness. The myth of Icarus warns us against flying too close to the sun, but there is another myth that must be told. The myth of the hero, who voluntarily enters the underworld, faces the dragon within, and returns with treasure. That treasure is not material. It is meaning, it is depth. It is the realization that you are not just a social identity, not just a job title, not just a collection of roles. You are a soul in process, a being becoming conscious, a unique expression of life itself, and the path to discovering this truth passes straight through the heart of your suffering. And yet this path is not forced upon you. It is offered, always offered. Life will give you signs. It will whisper first, then nudge, then roar. But at every point, you are given the choice, to numb or to awaken, to hide or to emerge, to fragment or to become whole. And the ones who awaken are not the strongest. They are not the smartest. They are the most honest. They are the ones who finally admit, this pain is not my enemy. It is my teacher. There is a sacredness in suffering that our modern world has forgotten. We want quick fixes, fast solutions, instant healing. But the soul does not operate on our timelines. The soul needs space. It needs darkness. It needs gestation. Like a seed planted in the soil, it must break open before it can rise. And that breaking feels like death, but it is life becoming visible. You must be willing to endure this breaking, not because suffering is good in itself, but because it reveals what is good and real and necessary in you. It purifies. It burns away the inessential. It forces you to let go of the ego's plans, so that the deeper intelligence of life can guide you. And once you pass through this fire, not around it, not over it, but through it, to come out changed. Not better, not superior, but more whole, more real, more aligned with the truth of your existence. Now you begin to see why the road to purpose is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You return to your wounds again and again, not because you have failed, but because you are refining, you are deepening, you are becoming. Each return brings new insight. Each layer peeled away brings you closer to the core. And at that core is not perfection. It is not control. It is not certainty. It is presence. It is the quiet knowing that your life matters, not because of what you achieve, but because of what you embody. And what you embody is hard-earned truth. But truth cannot be borrowed. It cannot be inherited. It must be lived. And living it means daring to walk the road few are willing to take. The road that leads through the valley, through the silence, through the disorientation of the self. This is not a journey you take to escape life. It is the journey you take to meet life face to face. There is great beauty in this meeting. Not the beauty of idealism, but the beauty of reality, raw, unpredictable, filled with both terror and wonder. You begin to see that your suffering was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to awaken you to your capacity for meaning, for depth, for transformation. And as you awaken, you begin to live differently. You speak with more clarity. You love with more intensity. You walk with more purpose. Not because you have no scars, but because your scars have become sacred. And perhaps this is the greatest secret of all, that your suffering, when embraced and integrated, becomes a source of power. Not power over others, but power within yourself. The power to create, the power to choose, the power to stand firm in a world that often asks you to betray your soul. That power does not come from avoiding your pain. It comes from walking into it with open eyes and an open heart, knowing that on the other side is not just survival, but a life shaped by meaning. You said, to encounter oneself in truth is the most difficult task a human being can undertake. The pain of suffering is not only in the external events that destabilize our lives, but in the confrontation it demands with the inner world we have long avoided. Most people will do anything not to meet the self. They will cover their wounds with distraction, their fears with pride, their confusion with ideology. But the deeper truth remains, waiting beneath the persona, the mask we wear for the world. Suffering tears holes in that mask. It disturbs the performance and makes the actor forget his lines. And suddenly, the stage is quiet. The applause is gone. And in the silence, the individual must ask, who am I when no one is watching? This moment, raw, exposed, terrifying, is the beginning of true psychological awakening. But it comes at a cost. That cost is honesty. A kind of honesty that is ruthless, not cruel, but unflinching. The soul does not speak in polite euphemisms. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in symptoms, And in suffering, it speaks in the language of what has been neglected. If your inner world has been abandoned in the pursuit of outer success, it will speak through depression. If you have betrayed your inner values to gain acceptance, it may speak through anxiety or guilt. And when the voice is not heard, it becomes louder. It creates crisis, not out of malice, but out of necessity. For the soul refuses to be ignored forever. The question is not whether we will suffer, but whether we will listen. To listen is to turn inward with humility and curiosity. To stop asking, how can I make the pain go away? And begin asking, what is this pain trying to teach me? This shift changes everything. Because now, instead of resisting the pain, we align with its message. We begin to participate in the process of transformation, not as victims, but as conscious agents of our becoming. To encounter the self is not merely to introspect. It is not to sit in endless cycles of analysis detached from the body and the heart. It is to descend fully into what is uncomfortable, to feel what has been unfelt, to grieve what has never been mourned, to admit what has long been denied, and to do so not as an act of indulgence, but as an act of liberation. Because only in this process does the false self begin to dissolve. Only here do the projections fall away, and the real self, the grounded, eternal self, begin to rise. And yet, we are not taught to value this kind of honesty. We are taught to perform, too perfect, to avoid discomfort. We are taught that weakness is failure and that vulnerability is shameful. But this conditioning is a lie. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the gateway to integration. The moment we allow ourselves to be seen, not as we want to be, but as we truly are, we begin to heal. Because wholeness cannot be achieved through hiding. It requires exposure. It requires the courage to stand in the light of our truth, even if that truth is messy, unresolved, or painful. But here lies another paradox. Once we embrace this inner exposure, we begin to access power. Not the power of control, but the power of alignment. When you are aligned with your inner truth, you are no longer fragmented. You are no longer fighting against parts of yourself. You are whole. And that wholeness radiates through your actions, your relationships, your presence. It is felt. It is not something you achieve. It's something you become. This is what it means to integrate. Integration is not perfection. It is unity. It is the sacred marriage of opposites, the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the dark, the masculine and the feminine, the rational and the intuitive. When these aspects of the self are brought into dialogue rather than conflict, energy is released. Creative energy, spiritual energy, directional energy. It is as if the psyche, once divided, becomes a single instrument through which life can play its most authentic melody. But such integration demands time. It demands patience. It demands presence. And most of all, it demands that we abandon the fantasy that healing is a linear path. It is not. Healing is cyclical. You will return to your wounds, again and again, but each time with more clarity, more compassion, more strength. This is not regression, it's deepening. Each cycle peels back another layer, revealing new aspects of yourself. And with each revelation, your purpose becomes more tangible, more embodied, more real. Purpose, then, is not something you find. It is something that finds you when you are ready, when you have cleared enough space within for it to emerge. And that space is created through the slow and steady work of inner integration. You do not need to chase your purpose. You need to become the kind of person who can receive it, who can carry it, who can live it without distortion. This is why suffering, integration, and purpose are inseparable. The energy that once went into avoiding pain is the same energy that now fuels your growth. The insights that once lay dormant in your shadow now become your wisdom. The wounds that once made you hide now become the very places where others find light. You do not rise despite your pain. You rise because of it, because you faced it, felt it, and allowed it to become part of your wholeness. And yet, this process is not unique to you. It is archetypal. It is embedded in the structure of human transformation. Across cultures, across time, this journey has repeated itself. The call to adventure, the descent into darkness, the confrontation with the shadow, the revelation of truth, and the return transformed. You were not alone in this process. You are walking a path walked by mystics, prophets, poets, and visionaries. You are not lost. You are in the middle of a sacred unfolding. This is why your suffering matters, not only for you, but for the world. Because when one person faces their darkness and integrates it, a ripple is created. The world shifts. Not in dramatic explosions, but in subtle ways, in the way you speak, in the way you love, in the way you lead, in the way you create. Your integration becomes inspiration. Your pain becomes power. Your authenticity becomes permission for others to be real. And here, the deeper meaning reveals itself. That you are not just healing for yourself. You are healing as part of a collective evolution. You are contributing to the awakening of the human spirit. Not through ideology, but through embodiment. Through presence. Through becoming a living example of what it means to suffer consciously, to integrate courageously, and to live meaningfully. There will be moments, of course, when doubt returns. When the darkness feels too heavy. When the old patterns threaten to reclaim you. But these moments are not failures. They are invitations. Each return to the wound is a chance to love it more fully, to understand it more deeply, to extract from it the next layer of wisdom. And in doing so, you continue to evolve not upward, in a straight line, but inward, in a spiral, ever closer to the center of your being. And in that center is silence, stillness, a presence untouched by pain or triumph. It is the source, the origin, the self, not the ego self, not the socially constructed identity, but the eternal, unchanging essence of who you are. And from this self, all purpose flows. It is not created. It is remembered. It is uncovered. It is lived. This is why the path to purpose cannot be mapped in advance. It is not a strategy. It is a surrender. A surrender to the wisdom of your own becoming. A surrender to the mystery of your own soul. A surrender to the truth that meaning is not something to be manufactured, it's something to be revealed. And it is revealed through suffering, through integration, and through your alignment with the archetypal journey that we are all, consciously or unconsciously, walking. To walk this path is to become more human. Not perfect, not human in the fullest sense, vulnerable, aware, and awake. It is to carry your pain with grace, to hold your truth with humility, to offer your presence as a gift, and in doing so, to become a vessel for something greater than yourself, a vessel for love, for truth, for the slow, sacred work of healing that our world so desperately needs.